I should say, okay, I do have tech karma, so I'm just going to say that at the beginning, but let's all just hope it works. So I'm going to start off, the title of my talk is, my presentation is Sobre, Zapateadofuturism, Sobre la Tarima in the Academy and in our scholarship. So I'm going to start with a video just a clip of a video that inspired this talk, and it'll set the stage. Let's all hope that my sound is working. No, I'm not plugged into sound, so where is the sound?
Wait, no, here it is.
Here.
Where's this?
Okay.
Where's your jack for?
And this is a song called Planta de los Pies from a group called Quetzal. Sobre la Tarima. So this is my inspiration. And I just wanted to, okay, move to the next slide. Oops. Okay, there. So I wanted just to put up the lyrics, which are printed in an article by the wonderful scholar Pat Zavea. What I really wanted to focus in on those lyrics for this particular presentation was the idea of time, and time as a guide, and the time signature as a particular guide, because we're going to talk about disruptions of linear time. So I just wanted to start right there. So Zapateado estilo son jarocho, the 21st century, is as much about the present and the future as it is the past. Though regionally particular in its practice, it is rooted in a general history of displacement, colonialism, power, and transformation. In the early 21st century in the US, it has become a practice of cultural diaspora built upon translocal dialogues. In 2008, Fandango practitioners of Zapateado in Seattle, Washington, began the ongoing process of learning and utilizing son jarocho Zapateado as a deliberate method of community building informed by decolonial perspectives fueled by both Chicana music practices and Zapatista teachings on cultures of autonomy. Seattle communities became part of this Fandango Sin Fronteras network when Marta Gonzalez and Quetzal Flores began holding weekly workshops in community centers and at the University of Washington through the Seattle Fandango Project Collective. As a participant in the collective, I was inspired by SFP's intention to decolonize music practices collectively and witness the ways SFP, which is Seattle Fandango Project, challenged knowledge production within a research university. Learning to practice Fandango compelled me to experience the complexities of convivencia within an institutional setting. And though I came to the practice as a space of healing with no intention to ever write about my experiences, my involvement has informed my scholarly practices to work collectively to transform knowledge production outside of Fandango context. I am now compelled to reflect upon the ethics and responsibility of senior scholars who have established themselves in fields that have not included Fandango practices that deliberately utilize son jarocho as an organizing tool. So taking a cue from Quetzal's Planta de los Pies lyrics, what does it mean to be an academic sobre la tarima? What difference does it make to be a scholar of Chicana feminism, a musicologist, a historian, among others, on la tarima? These are important questions to pose as they implicate questions of power and ethics as Zapateado and Fandango become increasingly incorporated into scholarly work. And so I launched this. This is a think piece that I'm proposing, and I do so with the utmost respect to everyone who is doing work in this area. But I do have some questions. But I do want to go to the term Zapateadofuturism. So where is that coming from? So lately I've been thinking a lot about Chicana futurism. I'm working on a book. It's hopefully will be out in the next year. But it's looking at this concept of Chicana futurism and how Chicana futurism disrupts linear time. And I'm looking at it just through a musical sense. So it's looking at how I am proposing or suggesting that groups, Chicano music groups have over time, since the 60s, enacted a Chicana futurism vision through music. But I'm inspired by Catherine Ramirez, who first proposed the idea of Chicana futurism, which she borrows from Afrofuturism. So it's already a very inclusive dialogue, but she's talking about the way that Chicana futurism explores the ways new and everyday technologies, including their detritus and transform Mexican American life and culture. It questions promises of science, technology, and humanism for Chicanas, Chicanos, and other people of color. Like Afrofuturism, which reflects diasporic experiences, Chicana futurism articulates colonial and post-colonial histories of indigenismo, mestizaje, hegemony, and survival. And I think, and so I'm so inspired by Catherine and Ramirez. And I also think implicit in what she's saying is there is a Chicana futurism disrupts linear time. And so in Zapateadofuturism, that disruption of linear time comes to the front. And I'm just going to quickly quote, and I'll get back to the music, but I did want to talk why, this goes back to the book, but why do I propose this idea of Chicana futurism as a disruption of linear time? Here's a simple quote, or not a simple quote, but here's a short quote from Martha Gonzalez talking about, I'll just say it, quote, "My memory is long. I will continue to travel into my past in order to move forward into the future. I sing the songs that are relevant and accountable to all communities who struggle." And so that's a nice little description of what I'm talking about. And then Pat Zavea in the same article talks about, along with other band members and their particular cultural heritages, the group's long memory shapes political visions that recapture history, grounded in current struggles. So this kind of playing with time is a constant thing. Zapateadofuturism, then, for me, I say, is an explicit disruption of linear time. In Zapateadofuturism, La Tarima functions as a communal time machine, collectively activated by strikes and stomps on wood. The moment La Tarima is activated, linear time is disrupted. La Tarima moves us in convivencia through the past, present, and future simultaneously. And here's a recent recent photo. We just had a encuentro with Colectivo Altepe, and that's Hema, who's leading the workshop. And why am I focusing on the Tarima? Why Zapateadofuturism? I'm just going to play a little clip from Anaí, who says, "Without the Tarima, as you so well explained, without the Tarima, there is no fandango." So I'll just play, and this is queued up. But think about time, the way she talks about time. Are we ready? Are we late?
Regular Saturday workshop at the Centro de la Raza, and what she has been working on is zapateado, the footwork, traditional footwork, dance on fandangos. Más que yo diría que es parte de la instrumentación jarocha. Entonces tiene la función de la percusión en la música. Obviamente es un instrumento que junta a toda la gente y sin la tarima pues no hay fandango porque no hay donde bailar, ¿no? Y entonces es un punto de reunión importante para los fandangueros que están rodeando la tarima. Entonces, pues el alma, podríamos decir, de un fandango. Pues. La música del fandango es algo que se ha estado pasando de generación en generación. Entonces nosotros le decimos la escuela de la vida, ¿no? Es algo que te habla acerca de experiencias que otras personas ya han tenido, ¿no? Entonces hasta te pueden ir advirtiendo del camino en el que vas, ¿no? Es algo que te llama, que te afinca a la tierra, ¿no? Obviamente hay alegrías, hay tristezas, hay de todo en la vida, ¿no? Entonces el fandango también tiene eso, ¿no? Una explicación de la vida misma, de cómo, cómo vivirla, cómo disfrutarla también, ¿no?
So just all the ideas around time and generation and passing knowledge and rootedness and keeping time in the alma, I mean, in the La Tarima as alma of the fandango. So this is, I think these are important concepts to talk about, and you mentioned in your previous talk too how those flow in. I think what's fascinating, if I can get back to here, is later. Anaí talks about my calendar is a fandango calendar. So her life no longer revolves around the Gregorian calendar, right? And so that this is a disruption of linear time, right? So this is how we get out of the time of modernity, of advancement that is always getting us further away from ourselves. So I quickly, because for sake of time, I'm just going to show images of La Tarima activated as a time machine, disrupting the linear timeline. And so just keep your eye on the Tarima. These are the different events that we do all over Seattle. So the Tarima is center there, but this is Martha and Quetzal doing a collective songwriting workshop. This is just one of our, well, this is when Andres Flores came and we did another weekly workshop. This is another way in which fandango practice has influenced Women Who Rock, which is another project I can talk about later, but you can see that Alice Bagg and Medusa, punk pioneers and hip-hop pioneers, West Coast Godmother hip-hop, are sitting on La Tarima. Anyway, I'll talk about this later, but you can go download that image for free. Nobuko Miyamoto came and did a fandango with us, so again, we're on the Tarima. These are all different concept, ideas of time and space. Women Who Rock, our most recent conference, was themed Water of Life, and here again, this is a beautiful picture of the disruption timeline. Maya Jupiter, Amarata, who's 4, and the ancestors in the altar behind, all being disrupted on La Tarima. And then most recently, we just had last weekend a fandango with Garifuna group called Garingu Angura and Collective Altepe. So not only bringing together timelines from the Garifanu community with the fandango community. So we're trying to mix it up. Here's just like a daily lesson in convivencia with the kids, right? So the kids are always part of the project here. And of course, Martha came with Whittier. This is the Chicago Fandango that we hosted. So this is just us having fun. And you know, the date here is January 28th. It was after the inauguration, so we all felt like we were gonna, I don't know, feel like today, like what's happening right now. And I'm going to talk about the lyric that we wrote in the back there, but that's just having fun. But before I do that, I want to, there's a very important quote, and this gets to, by Andres Flores, and this gets to the heart of what I'm arguing about, the ethics. So this is part of an encuentro that happened a couple years ago in Seattle. And so I like what Andres is teaching, sharing.
Of teaching, and it's in a way that's really kind of integrating the different pieces that have been for so long, like separated the dance from the song to, the versos, and he's kind of reintegrating everything. And I mean, everybody here is a maestro or maestra.
Están aprendiendo mal porque no hay mucha gente que enseñe realmente lo que es el fandango. Hay gente que te enseña a tocar un instrumento, pero no te dice todo lo que están haciendo ustedes. Entonces es muy diferente que aprendas a tocar un instrumento del son jarocho a que aprendas lo que es la comunidad o lo que es un fandango o los grupos de slam, ¿no? No es.
Right. So basically, his critique is that a lot of people are learning it badly. Why? Because what's missing, it's not so much about the music or the instruments, it's learning the ethic behind it or the spirit of convivencia, right? So with that in mind, I'm going to say, I should be clear, I don't teach Fandango or Son Jarocho classes, but I teach courses that incorporate the materials and media produced by Fandangueros, right? And although I have struggled with whether or not to write about my personal experience within Fandango communities, after much thought and encouragement, I realized that it was time for me to write about these implications of Fandango practices within academic settings. In this way, I would not be in the position of researching a community, right, that is an intimate healing place of friendship and family for me and my daughter, and a place of convivencia. But instead, my critical eye would be focused on power dynamics within the institution, particularly a research institution. And though I have been hesitant to write about Fandango practice within my scholarship, it's hard for me to move forward anymore because it has, without doing so, because it has so fundamentally changed my life, you know, my personal life, but also by extension changed how I function in the university and as an academic being. So, you know, I feel I have to be forthcoming. And because if I've learned anything through my practice as a fandanguera, it is that the ethos of the practice holds me accountable in many ways. And by extension, it holds anyone, any community member and any scholar accountable. And today I'm interested in contemplating the effects of convivencia to decolonize and transform scholarly practices based on linear timelines measured by individual criteria, and how that engagement with convivencia opens up this dialogue of accountability for scholars within the university, not just in Fandango communities. And also to the accountability to underrepresented scholars and graduate students as they confront structures of knowledge production based on individualism and resource exclusion within university power dynamics. And as the band Quetzal sings in their most recent CD, it's a critical time, a time of choice and a time to be critical of the status quo. And given Fandango and Son Jarocho's currency in the academy, it's now deserving its much deserved attention, or getting much deserved attention, it makes sense to me to begin this conversation, especially with other senior scholars who come to the practice in other ways to the academy. So it's really, my conversation is geared towards my colleagues at the senior level and what we can do. So some of the ways that the notions of convivencia can be practiced via the politic, or be practiced with this notion of convivencia and fusing it with Fandango ethos, is just simply through the citation of the politics of citation, right? Our most powerful currency within the institution. What does it mean to be accountable to practitioners, scholars, and students who bring such knowledge into the academy? And what is our accountability as mentors and sponsors to them? It can mean citing their work. It can mean holding off from publishing about the subject until one's students have completed their publications, right? Which is a practice. It means recognizing that power and resources are not evenly distributed within academic settings, and then working to pivot whatever relative power and resources we have to challenge linear timelines of individualist progress and advancement. I have taken the risk these last 7 years to try to do this, and have been part of a project that is taking these lessons in convivencia and transfers them to the Women Who Rock project, which has worked collectively to develop collective models of graduate and junior scholar mentorship. And I can talk more about that later in discussion. Again, this is just an opening conversation, so I will end with a few questions, again, mostly to senior fandangueros, to help us think about our relative power in the we all have power, it's a relative. So how do we leverage power within the institution and pivot resources towards underserved communities who have been objectified and researched by scholars rather than engaged with in dialogue? How to leverage power to, and resources to underrepresented faculty within the university? How do we take these practices and undo them, or use them to undo the kind of hierarchies of power that we live with every day? How to leverage, okay, so I asked these questions. So if these questions, this is my take, this is the end, my final point. If these questions aren't part of Fandango curriculum around Fandango practices, then teaching Fandango simply serves to reinforce the status quo. Its soul is evacuated. What is the point? It is a critical time. We need to reach into the past to create a world, and I had a picture to go with this, but my computer died. But it is a critical time for, it's a critical time for us and for them. And so I I leave with these questions, and I can talk about one of our lyrics that we wrote the day after the inauguration. Son las mentiras del sistema, ahora toca resistir con la música y poema y al cantar sobrevivir. And here, that's what we got to survive for. Okay, so thank you. Yes.
I really appreciated your comments about the academy and your stance in terms of being a practitioner and how you negotiate that. And I really, because you have some, I'd love to hear your thoughts about how, as a researcher, that's informed how you work as an academy in your own.
Yes, thank you. I think, let me restate your question. So you're just interested how that practice informs my scholarly life now? How do I approach me? Yeah, I think, many of us I was trained way back in the 80s, right? And so it was, the academy was, I think things have changed, but it was very strict in terms and I was a literary scholar, and cultural studies had just come onto the scene. It was opening things up, but we were not trained to do collective research as a humanities scholar. We were trained to do individual research, and then we would do individual publications, and that would get us our job. Everything was built around the individual efforts, right? Products. And so once I reached, obviously I played that game and I got tenure. And once I had the safety of tenure, I really wanted to think about how to live this in a different life. And so part of what we did was, I didn't necessarily at the beginning want to, I wanted to keep the Fandango space very separate because I had to do a lot of healing on my own from just being in the academy. So I didn't want to really involve it. But I took elements in collectivity and transferred that to the Women Who Rock Making Scenes Building Communities project, which Quetzal was part of, and yes, Yesenia was part of too. And so it was still going to be rooted as a standard quote unquote academic project. It was going to have its life within the academy, but it was going to be the method of convivencia. It was really going to shape how we did things, and it was a collective project. And so all publications are collective that come out of it, and the mentorship we did for graduate students, we decided to do collective mentoring. So we have a one-day workshop where we invite senior scholars from different universities, and we flip the script. Instead of having them the scholars present their scholarship, the graduate students do 5-minute presentations. We have about 10 of them, each in a roundtable fashion. And then after each student does their presentation, these amazing scholars just focus on that student. So they get individual mentoring in a very efficient time. And we've done it now for 7 years, and it's been amazing because every one of those students has matriculated, they've gotten their PhD, and they've got jobs. So that's one example. And then we have the archive, which I put up there, which is accessible. It's free. Anyone can download the information from there. So yeah, I don't want to take up too much time, but we could talk more. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I was wondering, this is a question for Emmy. I'm really fascinated with your work. I'm wondering how you're using the word reclaiming the tarima. So I'm wondering if you could maybe talk a little bit about, has the tarima gone somewhere that the women are reclaiming, or has it been used, at least in New York, in different contexts that...
I'm using it precisely because that's how they talk about it, how the women performers are talking about it. And I think they are coming from, music is a male-dominated field. And they're seeing this space that's traditionally for women and somehow neglected in some performance spaces, and they're wanting to really put it front and center and kind of just resituate it. So they're using the word reclaim. Maybe it's not the perfect way to describe it, but I think that's what the process is they're trying to negotiate where women's place in music, especially professional performance in a commercial kind of setting is, and how especially dance is usually spoken as the dancer over there is not a musician. There's a distinction, and they're kind of like, well, we're musicians too. We make rhythm. We are the in some cases, the leaders of the group. So that's where I think they're reclaiming that discourse is coming from. Yeah.
Yo me ha surgido varias reflexiones sobre las presentaciones y la que considero más importante.
I have many reflections about these presentations. The one I think is most important is
Sobre la promoción de la memoria de los grupos que vienen, de los países que vienen. Para mí importante.
the promotion or reinforcing of memory, especially of people who have come from these different countries, is the most important.
Pero en Europa ha surgido grandes problemas con los guetos de los grupos de diferentes países.
So, but in Europe there have been many problems, groups from different countries.
Y entonces yo creo que tenemos que tener cuidado cuando protegemos a esa memoria cultural de que no se pierda, pero teniendo en cuenta que tiene que integrarse en los países que estamos.
So he's saying that we have to be careful when we're protecting that memory, and that we also have to integrate into the countries that we're living in.
Porque en Europa, en Francia sobre todo, las personas que han emigrado a trabajar de Marruecos, de diferentes países, la propia sociedad francesa ha querido que estén aislados.
So like in places like France, where a lot of Moroccan people come to work, for example, the dominant culture would like to keep them at the margins.
Y como no ha habido integración, se ha producido el fenómeno del terrorismo.
So there hasn't been integration. The whole question of terrorism has arisen.
Entonces, todos los investigadores, sociología, todas las personas que estamos aquí, debemos de conservar y proteger, pero haciendo mucho cuidado, teniendo mucho cuidado en que no se genere el gueto.
Yes, we need to cultivate that protection of memory with great care.
Thank you.
Gracias. Thank you.
Thanks. Yes. You go next. Go ahead. You go ahead.
How do non-Mexican people hear about these fandangos? Are they guests, or are there little signs on the market down the street saying fandango Friday night or something?
Well, as a non-Mexican, there's a whole number of ways that these things are advertised. I don't want to say advertised because it is you kind of have to know someone to get into the network, so to speak. There is like a Facebook page that sends out the invites, that sort of thing. So there's this kind of networking, but there's not like flyers, or it's not in a magazine, or that's not like in the performance space of the New York Times or anything like that in New York.
And I would just add that it's really cool that in our flamenco studio now we're getting like Paula and seeing her there.
Yeah.
Like that all these people are using, some of these dance studios are becoming places where people get together and work. Yeah.
But I think most people are coming from, for lack of a better term, multicultural spaces where you just know. I knew people from Ballet Folklorico, and that's how I started to hear about the growing fandango scene. And then I learned it's monthly fandangos. So I know that every first Sunday of the month, not tomorrow, but this Sunday when I go back to New York, I'm going to be at a fandango. So you just learn that nonlinear new calendar kind of thing that has been developed, and it's kind of out of that network that I guess non-Mexicans learn about it, and Mexican people too. I mean, not everybody is just naturally integrated as a Mexican immigrant in the city.
No. That's it.
I got you over there next.
Thank you for both your presentations, especially the visual material. I have a general question that I began to want to ask yesterday, but then I see today. And it's all about this idea of the stamp or the stomp, right? Or your golpe. And the relationship to that is to the 12-foot stomp.
Mhm.
as you
Mhm.
know, right?
Mhm.
We were dancing on sand,
Mhm.
and I researched that metal taps really don't come in until the late 20s, early 1930s. Mostly because when we start chorus dancing, we needed to hear numbers of chorus dancers on the stage, right? So the amplification of that sound really comes. So that's sort of really interesting to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Please.
Wondering
Yeah.
about the difference
Yeah.
between the stamps and the tones.
Okay, so the metal tap exactly comes in with the modernity project in Mexico, the Ballet Folklórico, and the desire to create a more modern sort of presentation to the outside world that Mexico is ready to enter the first world economically and culturally. And so then, when this new movement of jaraneros that they're actually interacting with comes into play, the metal gets removed, and it goes back to the. And as a matter of fact, they even many of them stopped using the shoes that were specifically designed for that performative version of what this is. The ballet folklórico. Oh, the shoes were like the Miguelitos, for example. Yeah, the character shoes, and they had the ones that are the built-in nails and etc. Yeah, this is a Miguelito here. This shoe, and so this one does not have what has a little bit of metal, not much metal. So anyhow, so many people just started using comfortable shoes because that's what people wore to fandangos, and shoes that had maybe hard soles that they could stomp with. And so then it became a thing of like, this is not a performance; it's an interaction. It's a participatory interaction. So.
So I'm also, in relationship to that, I'm also really interested in the idea between the men's shoe and the woman's high-heeled shoe. I mean, in my book on tap dance, my last chapter is called Hoofing in Heels, right? This whole idea that women were really dancing in flat-soled shoes all through the 20th century because to dance like a man was confident.
Most,
Now
yeah.
that we're talking about really footwork that's coming into field, so I'm wondering if the women can really comment, if you don't mind, on the empowerment of dance and the sound.
And I just want to introduce, this is Constance Alice Hill, who wrote The Cultural History of Tap. Yeah.
I can talk about that a little bit, and I'll pass it to Michelle. For me, myself, and the women in New York, it's empowering because you are sounding. You're an integral part of the music. Like you're not just the dancer to the side looking cute. Like this is reinforced over and over by my informants. And aside from the sound, for example, Julia, who I spoke about, she finds it really empowering because any type of body, any body type can do this music. Anybody can perform this dance. You don't have to be a tiny ballet dancer who has to be lifted by her partner. You can be tall, short, skinny, larger. It doesn't matter what shape your body is. So that's a really empowering possibility for these dancers as well.
Yeah, I think, for me, my age, I don't wear the heel when I dance. I'm looking for the flat, but for the hard heel that's going to help me make a sound. And the way that I've been taught fandango practice, it's more about the sound than the look. So as long as I can, and I'm always so practicing trying to get the sound, and trying to get the rhythm. But, your question makes me think of the Peruvian Zapateado, which is really has a lot of, is inspired by tap, or is it kind of more a direct link with African American tap.
Hoofing.
Yeah, hoofing. Yeah, and so, we work with a woman named Monica Rojas, who's from Peru. She has a great dissertation on this, but yeah, I think that there is a connection, but maybe more through the Peruvian, at least from what I know, and what I know is not vast, but I would think that would be a good place to start to really look for that connection. Yeah.
One more question, and then okay, sorry, right there.
Well, I have several questions, but I think there are different ways of leadership in women. We cannot forget about the connection of that role of women who are cooking for the fandango, for instance, and those who don't have money but buy water or something.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh, yeah.
and that people are part of the center.
Mhm.
At any moment, I have heard that the Tarima, we are symbolically imagining that that's the center, symbolically. Because, so that's what we are thinking the Tarima of today. In the past, a fandango can happen without a Tarima. It has
Mhm.
a center. So there are many things that we have to kind of, really rethink about it and using words like maybe symbolic. I'm going to comment on Andres Flores' comment
Mhm.
or Michelle's.
Mhm.
So his comment was, people teach jarana or
Mhm.
requinto
Mhm.
or zapateado, but no one teaches the entire thing. No one teaches the whole that a fandango could be. You cannot be taught how to participate in a fandango. You participate and you learn. The rules are not only for zapateado but for everything, because
Mhm.
fandango is a popular pastime. And as such, is where you can fall in love, you can argue with your lover,
Mhm.
your husband can, realize at that moment that you have a lover.
Mhm. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
You speak with very great authority.
Yeah.
The men will take his hat off.
Yeah.
Women will, the entire body posture. I mean, there are so many rules in fandango that
Yeah.
there. But we cannot separate zapateado from that. We cannot
Right.
separate zapateado from the musicianship that happens with the musician. Zapateado doesn't need the fandango for it's just one more instrument. If there is not a requinto, we don't have a song because the requinto starts. If there are not jaranas that keep the beat, nothing happens. If there are not lyrics, nothing happens. And un putaquito gano just lasts for an hour.
Yeah.
So this entire thing is not. We are thinking of zapateado. We are putting the zapateado out there, but just not thinking about it. And this can be said for any popular music that happens that is from the people music.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And I think, and so Andres Flores, though, is speaking particularly from a particular understanding of fandango as an ethic, right? And so, and as a way of rethinking the world. So it's just not a fandango, but it's a particular way, and it's understanding this idea of convivencia and rebuilding the world and rebuilding power relations. He's looking at, I mean, from what I learned from that encuentro, he's trying to get us to understand power relations and how fandangos can be a tool for rethinking, not just reproducing the world as it is, but reproducing the world in a different way. And I agree with you 100% about the tarima, what it takes. It's not just the tarima, it's all the work behind the tarima. And so I didn't read it, but one of the slides said, the hidden labor of the fandango, right, is us. Who was cleaning up after that fandango last weekend? Me, right? Who was sweeping? Who brought the chicken? Right? Who made sure there was water and napkins? It was a bunch of us. But who went to the market? Right? Who didn't get sleep? Who's almost, yeah. But I do that with love, right? So much love. But I think you're absolutely right. It's the whole entire communal process. But I think what I've learned from Andres Flores is he's trying to say, yes, it's important to know the instruments and to sound good, but what's more important is why we get together in the first place, right? And it's to change, I would argue, to change the world and to disrupt linear time and create a whole new system. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree also completely. It's a piece of a huge puzzle, and it's almost like, a big mechanism that with one of these pieces loose, it doesn't quite function the same way. And yes, at the, what's it called, the King's Day, the Reyes, the Magos, we have the king cake, and whoever gets the baby has to bring the tamales and make the tamales for the Candelaria, and all these kinds of things are this background labor that makes it possible. And another note about the New York City community, they don't have sponsorship. Like the Folklorico has money from the consulate. The Mariachi Academy in New York has money from the consulate, and they have spaces always there for their events. So there's a lot of labor into negotiating a donated space with a business in New York City. So space is always a very precarious issue in New York in general. from rent to, you know, whatever. And it's also tiny spaces. It's also cold in winter. So like we have to find a space that's big enough to have a fandango, but also warm enough so you could play these string instruments. All that stuff is negotiated and hidden labor that goes through it. And it's all very important to make the whole thing function smoothly. Yeah.
And I think that bringing it back to the academy, I know it's just that, right? So just like, how do we rethink hierarchies of labor within the academy? How do we rethink the academy as moving towards emancipation rather than archiving for knowledge production in the service of the state, right? How do we create knowledge production in the service of emancipation? And so, as a senior faculty, I have the luxury of doing that, but I have to do that in collective. That cannot be done alone. So, yeah.